Today on CityCast Chicago, why is ICE targeting our City Key program? What do we think of Chicago's new marketing slogan? And we've got neighborhood shoutouts to get to. It's Tuesday, June 17th. I'm Jacoby Cochran, and this is what Chicago's talking about. I'm joined by executive producer Simone Alicea. Simone, morning, my friend. How was your weekend?
Good morning. It was pretty good. Went to Midsummer Fest, had a grand old time, and otherwise pretty low key. What about you?
I went to the Puerto Rican festival over in Humboldt Park. Absolutely one of the coolest car caravans in summertime, Shy. The number of flags, the number of merch with the flag on it, the number of people sitting out of car windows, out of car roofs. It's a sight to see, dog. And mugs don't even be going into the festival, into the park. They just be there for the car parade that's happening pretty much all weekend. But I was out there Sunday and it was jam-packed. People would get down to Division of Ashland, turn it on around, go right back up Division. It was beautiful. I got so many pictures.
Nobody does flag pride like Puerto Ricans do. Let me tell you. Like, they're
the Mexicans listening too, and they
trust me. I'm half Mexican. I am half Puerto Rican. We have this fight in my household all the time, and the Puerto Ricans win every time. I'm sorry. It is what it is.
It's on jerseys. It's on shorts. People in dresses, bandanas.
You
hats,
got the biggest
the black
chains,
flag, the chain.
You
baseball
the hats,
jerseys.
You've got it on earmuffs. You've got it on. You name something you can wear, and the flag's on it.
No, the music was blaring. It was a great time. I hadn't got out there in the last few years, but it was beautiful. And we actually went into Humboldt Park, ate a lot of good food. I ain't get on no carnival rides. Them things look terrifying.
You know, as someone who used to be like a 15-year-old whose job it was to run portable carnival rides, I don't blame you.
The Trump administration continues its mass xenophobic crusade to deport 1 million immigrants by the end of 2025. And in the first 6 months of this administration, they have gone to all lengths, from intensifying raids across cities, including Chicago. In fact, over the weekend, Trump announced on, of course, social media that he was giving ICE even more authority to crank up the raids in the city. But one resource in the city, which we on the podcast haven't talked about yet, but is increasingly under attacks by ICE, is Chicago's City Key program. Simone, this isn't a program that we've talked a lot about, but it's been around for some years now. Can you kind of give the breakdown of what it is and why ICE is putting so much pressure on this program right now?
So the City Key program is a city ID program. It is used widely by immigrants. The idea here is that, you need an ID for a lot of things, right? You need something that proves you are who you say you are, you live where you say you live, you're the age that you say you are, right? However, there are certain groups, particularly immigrants, but also survivors of, domestic abuse, who may have trouble getting, say, a driver's license or a regular state ID or some other form of government identification, or may be worried about records being kept by the entity issuing that ID. So the City Key program was developed under Mayor Rahm Emanuel in 2017 to provide this form of identification. It also acts as like a Ventra card, a library card. It gives you access to city services in addition to just being a government-issued form of identification. What we learned was that back in April, ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, subpoenaed the city for records of people who applied for the City Key. Now, you might be thinking, Simone, I thought you said that they don't keep track of records. That was the whole point. So back in 2024, the city clerk's office, the city clerk runs the City Key program, they opened up an online portal for people to apply. And the reason is because their in-person events were becoming overwhelmed by people who came to Chicago, largely from Venezuelan migrants, people who were bused to Chicago, people who were flown to Chicago, as we know, over the past few years. And so they opened this up to try to relieve some of that pressure.
When they were doing the program in person, they didn't have to keep those records in the exact same way. There wasn't a paper trail of all of this private information in the same way.
Exactly. When you're doing it in person, you have someone there who's reviewing it, who's confirming it, who's making sure it's all correct, but they don't actually have to keep track of those records. But once you put something into a form and it exists kind of in a digital format, it exists, but also because the city has what are called like document retention policies. There are rules about once you have something, you have to retain them for a certain period of time. And that is why the clerk says it retained these records related to city key applications that were made online since 2024. And it's interesting because like when this news first dropped, the Tribune was the first to report on this. They had got a copy of this subpoena that was issued. And at first, Johnson's administration, Mayor Brandon Johnson, was sort of like, we are responding to this, but wouldn't say if they had turned over these documents. They later walked that back and were like, we're not turning over these identifying documents. He then clarified further in a press conference and was like, this is an administrative subpoena, which means we are not under an obligation. We don't have to do this unless they escalate this legally. But advocates are really just sort of upset over the fact that the clerk's office has these records at all. That was kind of the whole point of the City Key program. They weren't supposed to have these.
And people said that even when they were creating this online form, acknowledging that, yes, we know the in-person system has gotten overwhelmed, that this could have long-term impacts. I think one data scientist said anything that is vulnerable to legal subpoena or just sort of is only protected by sort of the legal statute means it's vulnerable to like the changing administration, right? These changing ICE policy. And so sure, they're able to reject right now giving over this information. But, as this moves through the legal process, we've seen there are some judges who have ruled against the Trump administration and very many who've also ruled in favor, allowing these overstretches of authority to continue.
For her part, Ana Valencia, the city clerk, has responded to this and said, when you go and use the online portal, there is like a little warning that kind of says that by you doing this online, some of these records may be retained.
There was like an authorization checkbox as
yes.
there is when you're kind of going through these processes that lets you know the city's going to keep this. But some people are like, well, a lot of these individuals you're talking about, particularly in this case, are not people who we are expecting to understand what they're giving their data over to.
Well, but even now, besides that, who among us? When we go online to fill out a form, we click through.
I'm checking boxes. I'm checking boxes.
It is, we all do it.
None of us are paying attention to all of the data laws in front of us.
So the website would ask, by using the City Key online platform, you are agreeing to allow the Office of the City Clerk to keep a record of all the information you submit during your application process. And the trick with a lot of this is like a lot of the documents that people are showing might be foreign passports. It could be paperwork you get from an embassy or consulate. It could be, for a lot of folks coming from Venezuela, it was documents from the Department of Homeland Security about other processes they might be going through, right? And so obviously you can see why ICE would be interested in getting a hold of this information, right? They also subpoenaed the Chicago Department of Streets and Sanitation to get information about work authorizations in that department.
It's one of those situations that really highlights how and why people get pushed into the shadows. Because in so many of these stories we've talked about over the last few weeks, these are people who were going about the processes as best they could, right? Trying to apply for asylum, trying to go through the refugee program, trying to go through work authorization programs, signing up for the monitoring programs that sort of figured out where people maybe have been staying in the city, like going through all of these processes. And so many of them for them to potentially be used against them, that their private information in the City Key program could be turned over to the government, that they're going through programs and bait and switch people to come in for their monitoring appointments just to send them into handcuffs. It's using all of the information at the federal government's disposal to target the most vulnerable individuals. And it's already flown out of the window that the sort of xenophobic rhetoric that they use to justify these clamping downs on immigration. Like they were always just that. They were always dog whistles. Like these numbers they were trying to hit, 3,000 a day and 1 million. These were never just going to be the quote unquote criminals. This was always going to be families being separated and students being like taken off of their campuses and workers having their workplaces raided. And so I think even this brief pause we have now on the city being able to say no in the moment, how much opposition they'll be able to put up months from now as the courts get involved. It goes back to that idea I was trying to highlight of, everyone is vulnerable here.
Yeah, I think the other trick too is kind of what you're getting to is like, right, we're talking about this in the context of immigration enforcement and detention and deportation, right? And there are going to be some people who are like, well, that doesn't apply to me, right? I'm a citizen, like that doesn't affect me. However, when we're talking about personal information, right? Other things this administration is doing in order to get the information of immigrants, trying to get the IRS to share information. There was the Supreme Court ruling about the whole Doge thing, accessing personal data in Social Security systems, right? Like the data security of it all, the data privacy of it all. When you have an administration that has proven that they're going to make political attacks and they're going to target in political ways, we're talking about this in a specific context that is alarming in and of itself. But I think there are even broader implications potentially that we haven't experienced yet, but are hard to ignore.
Alice Sheehan has been following this closely over at the Tribune. To keep up with her reporting, please visit the links in our show notes.
This episode is sponsored by Babbel. Have you ever picked a vacation spot based on where you won't need a phrase book? With Babbel, the language barrier no longer has to hold you back. You can start speaking a new language with confidence thanks to Babbel's conversation-based techniques, which quickly teach you useful words and phrases about the things you actually talk about in the real world. Babbel has more than a dozen languages available for you to learn at your own pace, with material tailored to your individual proficiency level, interests, and time availability. I'm David Plotz, CEO of CityCast, and I've been learning Spanish with Babbel. What I really love about learning Spanish with Babbel is that it works with me where I am. The app and the website keep track of what I've learned. They help me review what I probably forgot from last time, and always is keeping me engaged with a new challenge based on actual conversations I might have in Spain or Mexico or Colombia, especially food conversations because I love food conversations. So get talking with Babbel. I want you to learn another language, so I'm teaming up with Babbel to give you 55% off subscriptions, but only for CityCast listeners at babbel.com/CityCast. Get up to 55% off at babbel.com/CityCast, spelled BABBEL.com/CityCast. Babbel.com/CityCast. Rules and restrictions may apply.
Last week, the city's tourism arm, Choose Chicago, launched its first marketing campaign in 3 years, Simone. They say this has been a year and a half in the making, and their new slogan is never done, never outdone.
Chicago, a city connected, not just by train lines or shore lines, but by the drive to never settle. We talk less, dream bigger, and never stop pushing. We change the course of rivers and the course of history. When we build things, the world looks up. Across our 77 neighborhoods, there's a shared spirit to outwork and outplay. To bring you bold flavors, fresh sounds, and captivating experiences. So welcome to the greatest city in the world. Because in Chicago, we are never done. And we are never outdone.
Grammy Award winner Jay Ivy there. Jacoby, what did you think of the slogan?
I will say, when I first read it on paper, never done, never outdone, my first thing, I read never done is like something has never been done. I know it didn't say that, but I was like, never done. Does that mean we do things that have never been done? But never done as in like never finished.
We're always working. Yeah.
And that just made me think about my principal, because I'd always be like, I'm done. And she'd be like, you finished, right? You're not cooking. Something like that. It was always that line that was used. So I think there was a small amount of grammar school trauma when I first read it. But like the actual meaning of it, never done, never outdone. I do appreciate the sentiment in that, right? The idea that we are always working towards something. We are always trying to improve. Never outdone. I love the fact that we lean into the sort of Chicago pride, Chicago arrogance. In totality, it's not my favorite. I think sprinkling a little J. Ivy on it helps. I got some broader criticisms about what it means to like sell Chicago with like a black face and black swagger, but what does it mean to not invest in black neighborhoods? But that's not really on Choose Chicago. That's just like my own thing. But I didn't love it on first read because I was a little just confused about what it meant. But I did like the video.
I was surprised at how much I liked it, but that's because I was fully expecting it to be really corny. This is a marketing campaign to people outside of Chicago to come visit Chicago, right? That's the whole point. It's not really for us. It is for the outside world to come. I'm still thinking about the Chicago Not in Chicago campaign of 2022, where it was like, that was mind-boggling. That campaign was wild. The whole point, if you missed that.
And was it more things in other places that really require Chicago?
Yes.
It wasn't really come to Chicago.
But they were trying to make that jump. That was the trick. Is the jump they were trying to make was, you have a thing in your city that without Chicago wouldn't have been possible. So therefore, you should come to Chicago.
Right. Come to the birthplace.
There were several leaps they were requiring the listener to make.
I will say, even though I'm not in love with like using the word in the definition, I will say if you just say Chicago, not in Chicago, it was never done, never outdone. Like if you don't say Chicago with never done, never outdone, whose slogan is that? Is that the Sky slogan? Is that Chicago Public Schools?
It was giving Just Bulls? Do It vibes. Like it was.
You know what I'm saying?
Really
I was like, is that a Target slogan?
Typically, it's something you're seeing visually in context. You know, with the stars, with the flag,
and the pictures,
with
flag.
the Sears Tower, the bean, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I like it as a saying. I'm kind of here for it. Like it very much vibes with what I think is so great about Chicago. Like it really kind of captures when people ask me like, what makes Chicago unique? What makes it different? Why do you like living there? Like it does capture that thing.
I think it captures Chicago's spirit and its philosophy very well. Like if you say it and then get into the conversation of it, the storytelling of it is very clear.
There's a part of me that really likes that it speaks to actual Chicagoans. Again, I don't know how effective that makes it as a marketing ploy. I don't know how somebody from, say, Milwaukee or Kansas City or St. Louis is gonna hear that and be like, oh yeah, I should come visit Chicago. But I think it's pretty cool, and I'm kind of into it. It's interesting. So when they did the unveiling, obviously this brings to mind like, okay, well, how is tourism doing in Chicago? And it's doing pretty well. It's been kind of going up, especially since, it kind of cratered in 2020, right? And has been growing pretty steadily. Because of kind of all this political turmoil, there has been a decrease in international tourism across the country. But Choose Chicago officials are hoping that they can make up for that in domestic tourism. They're hoping that. So this is kind of who this is for in many ways. It's for folks in other parts of the country to kind of see Chicago and maybe consider visiting and consider coming. But yeah, I think it could have been a lot worse. So I'm pretty pleased with it.
Some other things that are featured on the website, they talk house music with DJ Dwayne Powell, Chicago food with Dominique Leach. That's where we pulled
Betty.
up Lexington Betty Smokehouse. Talk street art with Scent Rock. Dilla is obviously there because what Chicago marketing campaign doesn't include?
He did coin everything dope about America comes from Chicago. So like they're basically taking his concept and iterating on it. It's tough to not to feature him there.
And it gives you a bunch of other resources to explain the city's 77 community areas. One last thing I want to mention was they talked about the listening tours and the focus groups. And I will say, if you break this down into two halves, the first half is for us, like we are acknowledging our faults, our history, like the things we are trying to improve on. And then I love that the second half doesn't like kind of capitulate to the tourists. And it's not like, oh, come see our beautiful city. It's like, our city is better than other places. It's probably better than yours. Pull up on us. So it's like to the Chicagoans, like never done. We working on ourselves. We getting there. We a work in progress. We on the North Star. And then to the outsider, it's like never outdone. It's like your little parks, your skyline, your tour around the world, food options. Yeah, nah, you ain't doing it like ours. You can stay where you are, or you can come over to us. And in many ways, that feels very Chicago. Humble to acknowledge we got work to do, but also arrogant enough to know the work we have done got us to a place that's better than yours.
Well, but it also gets to like the history. Like, I don't know, there is something about Chicago always working, not just in the sense of like where we need to improve as a city, but also in the sense of like, you know, just you have the from the 19th century, right? You got the industry, you've got the meatpacking, you've got the hog butcher for the world,
literally
work.
Be in this mud working.
I also think about like the comedy scene and the theater scene and how people work here. They work hard, they craft here before, and then, you know, they move to LA and New York to get big, to get famous, but they have to do the work here. The work has to happen here. And that's also what I often think about and like never done, you know, it's where you're practicing, you're crafting, you're making. And I think that's pretty cool.
We want to hear from y'all. What do y'all think? Are we too nice or are we too mean in part? 773-780-0246. How you feeling about never done, never outdone? Leave your name, your neighborhood, and your thoughts. Before we get out of here, we've got some neighborhood shout outs. We love giving some love to local spots, local restaurants, local bars, local murals, the things we love in and around our neighborhoods. And we got a couple from our CityCast Chicago neighbors. That's our CityCast members, if you're not familiar, that want to share a couple of their favorites.
Yeah, so Elizabeth S. is shouting out Shy Latin in Westtown, saying that it's a local restaurant owned by a friendly and fantastic chef who fuses the diverse cuisines of the Americas into delicious dishes, good drinks, and all around good vibes. I haven't been, so add it to my list to check out, but very solid. Love it.
Julio L. in Pilsen is shouting out Huck Finn Restaurant, which I have been to. They shouting out the one on Archer and Damon and McKinley Park. They said, I work at a popular donut shop and often get asked where else in the city I like to get donuts from. Huck Finn does classic style donuts very well, in addition to their awesome diner offerings. My favorites are their red velvet cake and cinnamon rolls. They've been a Chicago staple for me for decades. Julio works at the Donut Vault. Shout out, Julio. We appreciate you.
Getting your shout out in the podcaster newsletter is one of the perks of becoming a CityCast Chicago neighbor. Neighbors support the show, $10 a month, $100 a year. You pick one of those options. And in addition to making sure that we, you know, keep bringing you podcasts and newsletters every day, 5 days a week, you get cool perks like ad-free listening, members only preview of Chicago events, and also these neighborhood shout outs, which you can also read in the newsletter. So if that sounds interesting to you, you want to support the show, you've got a little to give, head to membership.citycast.fm.
One more perk, invites to exclusive members only events like the one we have coming up next Wednesday, fellow CityCast Chicago neighbor Mike McMains is a tour guide. He's been on the podcast a few times. His company is called Tours with Mike, and he's running a CityCast Chicago members-only version of his downtown LGBTQ stories walking tour. The tour is free to CityCast Chicago neighbors, but space is limited. That's why the first 5 people who become members today will get a guaranteed spot. If you already a neighbor, make sure you keep an eye on your inbox for that invite link. And if you're listening to all of these perks and these bennies and you thinking to yourself, where do I sign up? Membership.citycast.fm. Again, the podcast is free, but it ain't free to make. It ain't free to make. So help your boy out. Help your team out. We appreciate you.
Mike McBains is great. As you said, we've had him on the show. This is this is a great tour in time for Pride. You're going to learn about some LGBTQ history, specifically around downtown sites. There's also going to be a meetup at a bar afterwards, so you can meet your fellow CityCast Chicago neighbors, make some friends. And also, I heard, a little birdie has told me, that a certain host is going to stop by.
Oh, yeah, I am going to be on the tour. For sure,
Yeah,
I'm going to be out there. I'm going to get my walk on.
So if you want to say hi to Jacoby, it's a good time to do it. Again, first 5 members who join today will get a guaranteed spot. You do that at membership.citycast.fm. If you're already a neighbor, keep an eye out on your inbox for the registration link.
Please join me in giving a huge thank you to our executive producer, Simone Alisea. We appreciate you, Simone.
Hey, thanks, Jacoby.
Before we get out of here, please bookmark our website, chicago.citycast.fm. In addition to signing up to become a CityCast Chicago neighbor, you can also subscribe to our daily newsletter, Hey Chicago. Check out our neighborhood and walking guides, our full events calendar, and so much more. Something you're going to only get on the podcast, though. Some good news. It goes without saying, this Juneteenth week is packed with events across the city, y'all. It's Black Yacht Weekend. There are festivals from Navy Pier to North Lawndale. And then today, you've got the Juneteenth Freedom Market at the Salt Shed from 5 to 10 p.m. tonight. If you want more events this week, please, chicago.citycast.fm. Check out our events calendar, but also pop up every single day during the good news. I'm putting you on events that you might not find in our events calendar, right? I'll be throwing curveballs, some special things you can't find nowhere else but the end of the episode. So, stick around. We're going to be back bright and early tomorrow. Oh, what are we talking about tomorrow? Sandwiches. Oh, we're talking about Sammys. We're going to be back bright and early tomorrow talking about sandwiches. Peace.